having a hybrid meeting. It's my first time running a hybrid meeting for any group. I'm Julia Isaacs. I'm one of the co-leads of the monthly meeting team, and I'm joined by Christina Cook is in the back. She's our in-person host, and Susan Nossel is at her house. She's the virtual host, and Tom McClintock is running our cameras for us. He's the spouse of another monthly meeting team member, and Marion Friedel is another monthly meeting team member. And we're kind of excited to try to learn how to do hybrid meetings. For one reason, it may help reduce the carbon footprint of some of the meetings if we all learn the skills. And we're at that part of the learning curve where we're going to learn a lot, so please bear with us. I do want to thank James Reeb for allowing us to use this space. As you know, we often meet at the Friends Meeting House, which went through a very exciting 2-year renovation to become completely geothermal, not completely, but has geothermal and solar and all kinds of very cool carbon things. But we were so busy doing that, we weren't meeting in person. We haven't yet worked out the video side of so we're not yet able to host groups like 350, but we will soon, we think. We do want to make this an inclusive and welcoming space, whether you join us in person or in Zoom. We really want you to come to whichever way you want to. And I think I'm going to do the opening slides. We often start with a celebration of good news. A lot of climate change work is not good news. And so let's celebrate a little bit of good news. You'll see on the screens a few pictures from our recent trip. I think about 30 or 40 people from Madison went down, I'm just guessing, by bus and carpool to Chicago for a wonderful event organized by our own Emily Park. We had 3 stops. The first stop is at the Federal Reserve Bank, and that's what you're seeing there. Emily gave a talk. It was a small corner, so it was a crowded area, but a great talk. Next slide. We then went, I wanted to show that one of the things we had, Emily will know better than me, 12 to 15 different groups working together, and there were a lot of youth, some of the youth climate strike folks, and so a lot of youth in the crowd. If you can read that, one person's holding a sign saying Chase Bank brought you this destruction. Another one is saying, well, I can't read it from here, but hopefully you can read it. I liked his sign. Next slide. And then we did show up at the Chase Tower. A lot of our signs were about Chase, the #1 funder of fossil fuels. We did the civil disobedience dance and the die-in. And someone pointed out that members of the crowd decided to join us, join the dancers in the die-in. Next slide, I'm just giving you a little further. Then we ended up at the federal building where the Senator Durbin and Senator Duckworth of Illinois have their offices. And you may remember, we were in the middle of being very worried about Senator Manchin's, we call it the dirty deal, to push through this federal permitting. And so we did we did our dance in front of the Calder sculpture. There's some great photos of that. But then I wanted to highlight that young woman who's speaking on the screen. She was a junior from a high school in the Chicago area, I believe. And she gave such a great speech. I actually ducked out of the crowd and got on my cell phone and called Senator Baldwin, asking her to vote against the permitting bill. I had no idea what our chances were. Next slide. I didn't know what order I did these in, but anyways, we didn't know, it was hard to tell how our event was received, but we got better mainstream news media coverage. Well, there is more newspapers in Chicago than there are in Madison. And so we got an article in the Chicago Sun-Times talking about 200 activists being there in Chicago. Next slide. And this is the one where I just want to take a moment to celebrate. I think many of you may have called your senators, may have seen the pleas to call your senators to oppose the Schumer Manchin dirty deal. And this was our post on our sister organization, 350 Wisconsin Action, talking about this unexpected win that we got. So do people, in-person people, want to say something? You say, yes, Judy, shall we clap or something? Just to celebrate some good news, since we have so little. It doesn't mean this fight is over, so keep tuned, but I mean, it was a wonderful win. Now I'm going to ask Marion to give who is on the monthly meeting team and lead of the climate justice team, to do a land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Julia. So right now we're going to pause just very briefly to acknowledge our ties to the land, and we also use this time to reflect on and acknowledge the debt we owe to the Indigenous people who stewarded these lands until they were forced off of them. This photo, which you should see on the screen, was taken in Dane County on the ancestral homeland of the Ho-Chungra, or people of the sacred voice, who today are known as the members of the Ho-Chunk Nation. Despite decades of ethnic cleansing, the federal and state governments were unsuccessful in making the Ho-Chunk leave Wisconsin. I encourage us all to continue to learn more of the centuries-old stories of Indigenous people, and to think about how these stories and traditional ecological knowledge can transform our collective relationship with our land. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. One more slide before we turn to Susan to introduce Joe, our speaker tonight. Next slide. Just a preview of the evening that, of course, I can't really read that from here, but I believe our title was, well, Susan Millar will give the title. I'm going to turn to Susan Millar, who is the co-lead of the Community Climate Solutions team, and she will introduce our speaker, Joe Parisi, executive of Dane County. And after he speaks, we'll have time for Q&A, and then we'll have some more updates from what 350 Wisconsin is doing. And then Kathy Kuntz, who works in the Office of Climate Change and Sustain Energy, will stay and take more Q's and A's. So with that, I'm going to ask you to take down the slides and maybe spotlight Susan Millar, who's going to introduce. We're doing an introduction from the Zoom. And so Susan, let's make sure we get the volume right, but if you could introduce Joe. And Joe, you can come on up and stand here.
Okay, so as a co-lead for 350 Wisconsin's Community Climate Solutions team, I am delighted to introduce Joe Parisi, who has been serving as Dane County's elected supervisor since 2011, after spending several years as a member of the State Assembly. Now, I really mean that I'm delighted to introduce Joe. This is because his goals and strategies for leading Dane County so strongly intersect with CCST's goals, one of which is to, quote, help Wisconsin's local governments achieve just and equitable climate goals as fast as possible, as many of you know. So as a county superintendent, Joe is responsible for 31 departments ranging from airport to zoo, plus another 12 featured resources, what they call featured resources. Who would have thunk that among the bright shining stars of this panoply of departments and responsibilities, we would, one, find one of the most comprehensive climate action plans in the country, commissioned by Joe. Two, find Dane County's Office of Energy and Climate Change, led, as Julia just said, by CCST's our CCST prior co-leaders, Kathy Kuntz. Also, this office was established by Joe. Or that this county's landfill would be managed by a Department of Waste and Renewables, a department that is proposing to build a sustainable campus, and that is featured by an American Association for Advancement of Science film featuring local communities across the US that are addressing climate change. In short, Joe is leading a local government that is very effectively spurring emissions reductions in all kinds of ways. As Kathy Kuntz has put it, he is an advocate for the possible. In my terms, he takes a can-do approach that enables the Dane County staff to achieve climate goals, and that also models how other counties across the state and the country can do this. And that is why I'm delighted to introduce Dane County's Superintendent, Joe Parisi.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I am Dane County Executive Joe Parisi. For the folks who are tuned in from across the state, welcome to you also. It's really great to have all of you here. I think most people are familiar with Dane County. Of our guests, you might think of Madison, of course, when you think of Dane County, but Madison is actually a little less than half the population of our county. We have a wide variety and wide diversity throughout Dane County. We have Madison, of course, the core suburbs, small towns, lots of agriculture and lots of beautiful land. So thank you again for having me here. And let me start by thanking all of you for the great work that you do. It's so important to have advocates on the ground and grassroots organizations, which are so key to the work that we're doing, because as you may know, a county government, local governments, we can't really impose a lot of regulations, rules, that sort of thing, like maybe the federal government can and the state government can. We can't say this is what you can emit, et cetera, et cetera. We have to focus on what we refer to as the art of the possible, looking at the tools we have, how can we still accomplish our goals? And it turns out that there's a heck of a lot you can do when you bring people together and you have a lot of like-minded people who are interested in the same thing. And that's another reason that I'm so glad that folks like 350 exist and are expanding and more people are coming in, because sometimes you can like beat your head against the wall and feel like this work, you feel kind of alone, right? And is anyone listening? But more and more and more we see that people do care, and the people who care are in the majority, and it's a growing movement. So thank you. It's there's a lot. We have a lot of challenges, obviously, but there's a lot that I'm certainly hopeful about too. So yeah, as was mentioned, I became county executive about 11 years ago, and before that I served about 4 terms in the state legislature. And I've always had a passion for protecting the environment, for clean energy, and a lot of that seemed, it was pretty obvious what you could do about that in the state legislature, but coming into local government, it wasn't quite as clear, because it wasn't something that people were talking about and doing a lot about. So when I came in, we started looking at what can we do as county government, and what do we have to react to as county government? Because as we know, the climate is changing, and we've certainly learned the last few years that it's changing much more than a lot of people even realized a decade ago. And we started seeing the fires in out west, and different droughts in different parts of the planet. But we had to look at, okay, how is climate change going to impact us here locally in Dane County, and what do we as county government need to do to prepare for that? So we partnered early on with the university, and we asked them to help do some modeling to show us what to expect here locally and what we had to be prepared for. Now, this was news 10 years ago. It's not as much news anymore, but what they told us then was we are going to have warmer and wetter weather. We're going to have more 90+ degree days during the summer. Our winters are going to be warmer, and we are going to have a lot more precipitation, and a lot more precipitation coming down all at once that we have to prepare for. And we certainly saw that in a big way in 2018 with the floods, and we've seen it more and more since then. And so what we did, first of all, we looked at adaptation. What do we have to do to change? And so all of our different departments, we asked them to build into their strategic plans how climate change would impact their work. So the public health department, for example, needs to be preparing for different insect-borne diseases that we didn't have to deal with in the past. And we've seen some of that already starting to happen. Our emergency management department had to get better prepared for the types of flooding that we're starting to see. Our highway department has to do different engineering, use bigger culverts when they're doing construction, et cetera, all to prepare. So once we got to that place, we started looking at, okay, now what can we do to do our part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as a county? Because, you know, we have a lot of thoughts about what other people could do, but we knew we had to walk the walk first before we could start telling other people they needed to clean up their act. So first we went for what to folks in this room and on the Zoom might be pretty obvious: energy efficiency has the biggest bang for the buck. The return on investment is usually just a few years. And it's an important way to steward tax dollars, because we make those investments into energy efficiency, we lower our bills, and that's more money that's available for the vital services we provide and fewer tax dollars that have to be expended providing those services. So we created something called the Smart Fund, which was a couple $1 million a year in county government, in county budgets, to start doing energy efficiency. We have dozens of different buildings and facilities, et cetera, throughout county government. And that's been an ongoing process. And we've done so much of that now that we're in a really exciting phase where we're doing advanced energy efficiency studies and having people come in and saying, okay, you guys have done a lot, but how can we push the envelope? Because we like to push the envelope because we want to be an example for other people. We like being first, so it's easier for other people to follow. And some of our latest work that we're going to be doing is both energy efficiency and more renewables. We're going to be doing some more geothermal retrofits at a couple of our campuses. So we got past the energy efficiency, and then we started assessing for solar power. And as of today, we have 17 different county facilities of varying sizes with solar on them. You can see on the slide, the single photo to my right, I guess would be your right also, is our medical examiner's building. Then we have a park up in the left-hand side that has a facility. That's a park with a campground, and it's a beautiful park. It's the Lewis Lunny Park, Lake Farm Park, and people come there to camp. And we thought, well, we don't want to be destroying, you know, the very thing that people come there to see. So we decided we needed to be 100% offset. So it's the first, I believe, in the state, and maybe the only 100% solar-powered park, facility, and campground. All of the camping facilities are solar powered. And then we started looking at, okay, in a way it was almost easy finding buildings to put things on. But then you find after you kind of max out there, you still have a long ways to go to get your offset of all of your renewable electricity, and you're out of roofs. So what do you do next? So what we did, as was mentioned, we have an airport. And when you have an airport, there's a lot of land around it that cannot be built on because of FAA regulations. And so we started doing an assessment to see if there was land that could accept solar that would also not, you know, reflect back up into the eyes of the pilots when they're trying to land, because that's bad for business. So we did find about, I don't even, do you know how many acres is that? Like 40 acres, Kathy? About 40 acres that seemed to fit the bill. And then we approached MG&E, for the folks on the Zoom, Madison Gas and Electric, our local utility, and we said, we have the perfect spot for about an 8 megawatt solar farm. If you guys come in and build it, we promise to buy all of the electricity from it. And so they came in, they looked at it, they did the math. It was a good deal for them because they had a guaranteed customer. Because of FAA regulations, we had to lease it to them at market rate. So we lease that land, we make a profit. They did the construction, they built it, so no money out of the taxpayer's pocket. And as part of the deal, we told them we also wanted to pay less for that electricity than we're paying now for our grid electricity. They agreed, they built it, and I should say they built it during the height of the pandemic when people were losing jobs left and right, out of work. Everyone here remembers what that was like. And there were hundreds of people employed at that project during the height of the pandemic because it was outside building that solar field. And again, this comes down to the argument that everyone here is so familiar with, that, you know, why are we spending all this money writing checks to pay companies to send to another state or another country? We might as just well be burning those dollars. It doesn't do us any good. We spend it and it's gone. And instead, we invested these dollars, in this case, MG&E invested these dollars right here at home and gave people jobs during the pandemic. Then they take those dollars and they spend them locally, and the money stays here. And so once that was completed, that project alone now offsets 40% of Dane County government's total electricity, and saves us over $100,000 annually on our electric bill. So this is a great example of the project when people can stop asking the question, well, should we do this? Can we afford to do it? The question now needs to be, why aren't you doing this? Because this is the right thing to do for the environment and it's saving taxpayer dollars. So once we did that, we kept getting closer, looking at what we had to do. We realized we needed one more solar field about twice as big as that. So we went out looking for land again, and we acquired some land right next to our landfill. And we struck another deal with another utility that works in this area. And we are now building a solar field about twice as big as that. It's actually going to be a 17 megawatt field, 33,000 solar panels. I just love thinking about that. How many solar panels in a field for us solar geeks? And that is under construction now. And it will be going online. We'll be flipping the switch in early 23, probably around January. And when that occurs, we will have achieved for Dane County government 100% renewable energy offset. We're the first county in the state and one of just a few in the nation. So we're really proud of that, really excited about it. And we're able to do that because we have amazing staff. We have people who are dedicated to this, and we have a community that wants us to do that too. And I can't emphasize how important that is and why, again, the mission of 350 to let your elected officials know what you want. The more people in this room and on this Zoom, let their local elected officials know that you want them to push the envelope. You want them to look at renewables. You want them to do solar. And it's not just some, it's not just some like Dane County thing, right? We're saving money. We're saving money. We're being fiscally responsible. So this can be done. And it's really exciting. So there's some other really neat areas that we're involved in also, because not only are we reaching our goal, actually I should say 2 years early, we were shooting for 2025 to be 100% renewable offset, and we'll have it in 2023. We have a goal of being carbon neutral by 2030. So how do we get there? We've reduced our CO2 emissions, I believe, 62% in the last few years because of all our solar. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at, 62%. That's you can make a lot of progress. But that last of almost 30-some% is pretty challenging, right? Because as you know, CO2 doesn't just come from our buildings. We're a county. We have buildings that burn natural gas, so it's that's not the electricity piece. And we have a lot of vehicles. We plow the roads. We fix highways. We have a sheriff's department. We do a lot of driving. Now we've converted to we're in more and more into electric vehicles. My county car is an EV, and I love driving around in it. But on a bigger scale, what we're looking at, especially for our high fuel consuming vehicles like highway trucks, and folks from around here have seen the big orange county trucks that you see plowing snow and fixing roads. Those things take diesel, and they get literally about 5 miles per gallon, and diesel is back up well over 5. It's probably $6 a gallon today, given what's been happening with gas. So what we're doing is we have been slowly converting our fleet to run on renewable natural gas. Now, there's CNG, compressed natural gas, then there's renewable natural gas. And we get our renewable natural gas from a very unique place. We make it. So as a county, we have a landfill. And as you know, landfills generate methane gas, a very powerful greenhouse gas that we need to be addressing ASAP to make our short-term goals. A few years back, we decided to build a plant at our landfill. We take all of the methane gas, we have piping throughout our landfill that extracts the methane gas that's generated from the trash you threw out last month. And instead of flaring that off like you see in a lot of landfills, we take it and this plant cleans it and compresses it and pipes it into the natural gas pipeline that is literally on our property. We were very fortunate, it was right there. It still costs a heck of a lot of money to tap into it, but it's there, so it's convenient, and we were able to. And this plant was, again, because we live in this community and folks support us in this is a $28 million plant. And this is another first. We're the first government to try and do something like this. So there was risk here. We were pretty sure it was going to work, but it wasn't a guarantee. But it was important enough and it looked good enough that we decided to try. So we take that gas, we clean it and compress it. We sell it into the pipeline, but first we use it on our own vehicles. So everything that we don't use on our vehicles, we sell into the pipeline. But just last year, with our 100 CNG vehicles and the price of fuel, we saved over $300,000 in fuel costs, because this costs us about $1.50 a gallon. So the comparables are just, off the charts, that this is better, that the vehicles are more low maintenance. We will continue, as our vehicles age out, to replace them with renewable natural gas vehicles. And then all of the gas, we make much more than we consume. We sell, as I mentioned, and we're able to get renewable energy credits from those on the California market and other markets of high finance that I don't completely understand. But we literally make several $1 million a year on our gas by selling the gas and selling the credits. So this plant in a few years will have paid for itself. And again, that's millions of dollars annually coming in for taxpayers and to provide services that don't have to be supported with tax dollars. Another thing that we're doing here is, for the folks who aren't from around here, we have a beautiful chain of lakes in Dane County, as the folks in this room know. And we have challenges with algae growth in our lakes and pollution. And most of that is caused by phosphorus runoff. Phosphorus comes from urban sources and it comes from rural sources. Now, the rural sources come from the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, Dane County is not just Madison. We are surrounded by acres of ag land. We're actually one of the top dairy producing states or counties in the nation. In an area we call the North Mendota watershed, for the folks here, that's Middleton, town of Springfield, up north of Lake Mendota, there are 60,000 head of cows just in that area. Now, all of those cows don't just make milk, they make manure. And I have learned so much about manure as county executive. I was joking, I have a degree in manureology. I didn't know anything about it when I started, but boy, do I now. And that manure is also on the fields. And again, a certain amount is good as organic matter, but too much, it rains, it runs off, and it feeds the algae. So we have a lot of partnerships with our farmers to reduce the runoff. But what we really need to do is reduce the amount of manure that goes on the fields. So we have a partnership with a number of our farmers, and we've helped spur the development of 2 manure digesters. Between those two digesters, they treat the manure of about 10,000 of those 60,000 cows right now. And they take it, they remove the phosphorus, and it goes through an anaerobic digestion process which results in methane gas, right? Instead of it just, sitting and emitting the methane from the ponds and the lagoons, we put it through this process and then take out the methane gas. And then that methane gas now is compressed and shipped to our plant, and the same story happens. It gets turned into transportation fuel. So the next part, so that's pretty exciting. It's a big deal. It reduces a lot of methane. So what is that next slide, Kathy? Is that our carbon sequestration slide? Okay, good. Yeah, so the next piece of this, as we're going again on our goal of being carbon neutral by 2030, is sequestration. And because we are blessed with all of this rural land, we have the opportunity to do a lot of natural carbon sequestration. As folks may or may not know, an acre of prairie sequesters about the same amount of carbon as an acre of forested land, which is a really neat and interesting fact. That is another thing that I didn't know until a few years ago. And so what we're doing in Dane County is we've added staff and added resources and work with a lot of local volunteers to do acres and acres of prairie and wetland restoration. One of the examples that we did, one of our bigger purchases a few years ago, folks here, adjacent to the Pheasant Branch Nature Preserve, there was an old farm there that was in a very environmentally sensitive area, right at the headwaters of the Pheasant Branch Creek that runs into Lake Mendota. It was very prone to runoff, and it was up for sale. Now, it was up for sale to the highest bidder, and it was actually platted out and was going to be a residential development. And we really didn't want that to happen on that 160 acres for a number of reasons, both recreational, aesthetic, flood prevention, because as I mentioned, the flooding that devastated especially that area in 2018, the additional runoff directly into Pheasant Branch and Lake Mendota that would occur if that development would have happened would have been fairly devastating. And then there's the restoration piece. So we purchased that 160 acres, and we are in a years-long process now. We're making a lot of progress of restoring it. We've cleared out all the buildings that were there. We restored the wetland, and every year we're restoring another about 40 acres to prairie. And prairie just has so many benefits, obviously for pollinators, et cetera. And so that's our other part of our sequestration efforts, is doing everything we can to restore land. And we actually have staff we're bringing on board to monitor the data, to make sure we're not just saying, well, we think we're about carbon neutral by now, because you have to register. There's a registration that you do, that you pay for, and they double check to see what you're doing. And yeah, is there another slide? Okay, so yeah, so then there's Kathy, who you all met and a lot of you know, for the folks on the Zoom. Kathy Kuntz is the director of the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change. This was a division that I created a few years back to bring all of our climate work under one roof and do the work internally in county government, but also externally out into the community. Because as I said earlier, first we wanted to make sure we were walking the walk before we could ask other people to do the same. And so now we're in a position where we're able to bring local folks together. We have an organization locally that's called the Sustainable Leaders Collaborative, and that's something that this mayor of Madison and I put together that brings all of the local municipalities, of which there are 60 in Dane County, together, all school districts coming together to share information on how people can move forward with their climate goals. And we've had many, many tangible results just from convening people and bringing them together. Folks who wanted to do solar but didn't know how. One of our first meetings, people were saying, gosh, we wanted to do solar on our building, but we couldn't afford it. And someone else said, well, yes, you can. Here's how we did it. And so that information, it becomes contagious. In McFarland, Wisconsin, we have our first net zero municipal public safety building being built, their administration building being built. We have a net zero school in Oregon, Wisconsin. We have so many positive things happening and so much momentum going on with local governments. And we hope to be an example to governments and counties throughout the state of Wisconsin now, because as I mentioned, we did a lot of things that I think other folks would maybe like to do, but it's not always easy being the first. But now we have technical know-how we can share with them. We do about 150 tours at our landfill every year. And we just learned recently that a county in Illinois is going to build a gas recovery plant at their landfill like ours because of what we did and because of the technology we're able to share with them. So this is how this can become bigger than just us, and why it's so important that we lead and that we recognize that, no matter how challenging this is. I mean, we started doing the bulk of our work during the Trump administration, right? And was there, a more challenging time for people who care about protecting the environment? But what we realized, as much as we need the state and the federal government, when they're not going our way, that doesn't have to stop us from making real progress at the local level, because ultimately that's where all of the progress has to happen. And so what Kathy and I do, we go around and we give a lot of talks. We talk about what we're doing, and we view this from a community organizing standpoint, which is why it's so important to connect with groups like yours. We want to connect to other groups who are organized and in the community and who can share this work, because not only do we work with other units of government, but we work with the community. We talk to we talk to anyone who'll listen to us. We talk to the business community, we talk to the faith community, different faith communities, and there's so much work going on. We met with the HVAC specialists, and people listen and they hear and they're like, oh yeah, maybe we can do that, or I wanted to do that. So our Office of Energy and Climate Change is becoming a clearinghouse for folks, Now we're in this really exciting time dissecting the new federal legislation and all that there is there now for nonprofits, for businesses, for residential customers. And we want to help people navigate that. And we always look at, if someone wants to do something, let's not look at why we can't, let's figure out how we can. And it turns out there almost always is a way to come forward. Then I think the last thing we do is we try to shine a light on folks who are doing good things. Like the Friends Meeting House, right? They're going to get a Climate Champion Award. We have a program called our Climate Champions, and it recognizes folks who are doing good work. Now, if you're a business and you want to do the right thing, that's great. But also, if you're a business who's doing the right thing, we want you to be recognized, and because it's good for you too, because then your customers or potential customers know that you're a business that cares about the environment. If you're a school that's doing the right thing and you get a climate change award, it's important for people to be recognized because, again, we say it's contagious. It's just like when solar goes up on a roof in one neighborhood, often you'll see more solar starting then. When solar goes up on a business, the other businesses are going to start looking and you'll see more solar. So we see a lot of great momentum. We'd love to continue to partner with you. And, we always talk about also, and I'll wrap up and leave time for questions after this, but it doesn't matter where you are or what you do if you want to make a difference about the climate. A lot of us think, well, I have to go into environmental advocacy, which is great if that's the kind of profession you want to do. I want to work for an environmental organization. That's great. But you can make change anywhere you are. And sometimes that's where the greatest change happens, within a business, within your faith community, within our friend, we were just talking about our friend, Karen Menendez-Collar, the director of Centro Hispano in Madison. They're not in the business of advocating for the environment. It's a Latino community center and they do a lot more than that. But they're a fixture in the Latino community and they're building a new facility. And Karen cares deeply about the environment. And so we talked, Karen and Kathy got together. They already had their kind of initial plans drawn up for their new building that they're going to be constructing. And Karen said, you know what? I want to do this differently. I want renewables. I want it to be more efficient. I want it to be as close to net zero as we can. And she got pushed back and she pushed right back. And they redesigned the entire facility. And now it's a completely different project because one person stepped up and said, hey, I think we can do this. The business manager at that net zero school I mentioned in Oregon, Wisconsin, that push didn't come from an environmental advocacy. It came from their business manager who said, you know what? It makes business sense to be a net zero school because we can do this up front when we build it. And then we get to spend all of those dollars we would have spent on energy on educating young people. So anywhere you are, in any company you're in, at home, at your church, at your temple, you can make a difference. And that's where it has to come from. So I think I'll stop there. And was it questions or do you want me to exit for a while?
We'd love to have you stay for questions.
Sure.
And we're going to, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, so inspiring. Thank you so much. So we're going to try getting questions both from the virtual audience and here. And Susan, I think you are monitoring the chat. If you want to ask one question first, and then I'll see if there's questions here.
Okay, well, let's see. So I'm reading a question in the chat that says, I know that this is focusing a lot on businesses and industries, but are you doing work in trying to make the benefits of solar energy for those that rent? I think this is important.
Oh, solar.
Think about since a high percentage of Madisonians rent their housing, and I know there are barriers to getting solar energy for them. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a really good point and a really good question. We really try to focus our work and through looking at it through the perspective of equity. We don't want solar or renewables just to be for someone like me who was able to afford to put solar on my house a couple of years ago. It's great if those of us who can afford it do it, but the people who are impacted the most by climate change are usually the folks who contribute the least to it, and maybe are the least able, because of their circumstances, to do things like solar or efficiency. So we've got a couple of things going, in this field. One of the neat synergies that happened when we brought people together, when we created Kathy's office, we brought people from the community together to develop what we call our climate action plan. I think there was a picture of it in the slide. And that's the vehicle for which we do the work in the community that I talked about. It set out our strict goals and what we need to do to get there in various sectors. And we also look at this from the job perspective. So as we brought folks together, two of the people there, it was a broad coalition. One of them was someone from a solar company in town, and the other was my friend Ruben Anthony, who is the president and CEO of the Urban League in Madison. And they were talking, and Ruben was talking to the solar guy about some job training programs they have, and the solar guy was saying, well, I'm hiring a bunch of people, and there's a worker shortage right now. If we can get a jobs pipeline going, that would be great. And so the Urban League is training people from underserved communities into the basics of solar, and they're getting hired by this solar company and becoming solar installers. So first there's the job aspect of that and who's going to benefit from the new green economy. And it's so important that we make those types of connections. And then there's directly to what the question was, how do we get energy savings to people who need it? So we're doing a couple of things. We have an organization in Dane County called Operation Fresh Start. And this is an organization that works with young people ages 17 through 24, many of whom have had some challenges in life and need a second chance. Some have been incarcerated, most of them haven't made it through school, but a lot of really good young people who just, the traditional ways didn't fit for them. We do some work with them. We hire a couple of their crews. It's usually about a dozen people. So they do different projects, and then they also earn their GED and address some of the challenges they're facing. But we've created a couple of youth conservation corps in Dane County, and these corps do a lot of work in some of the things I mentioned, our prairie restoration and working in our parks and doing environmental remediation. And now we're going to partner with Operation Fresh Start. We have money in this year's budget to help them put together a youth climate corps. And the mission of this climate corps will be to go into and work with landlords in some of this naturally occurring affordable housing that maybe the landlords aren't or can't make the investment in to get energy efficiency, and help do energy efficiency upgrades for them. So again, it'll be the young people who benefit from this, and then going back into the community in some of these older rental units and doing energy efficiency work in those units to make sure that everyone can benefit.
Super, thank you. Here's another question
Susan?
from Kevin. Oh, go ahead.
Let me just see if there's I thought we'd alternate. Let me just see if there's a question from the in-person crowd.
Okay.
But maybe, is there anyone here who has a question? You'll have to, John Greenler, come on up to the microphone, please.
Come on.
Yeah, honestly, I probably have too many questions. One that really inspired me was the story about the renewable natural gas and the work that you're doing in generating that, and the fact that you have an excess. It's great that you can sell it as renewable energy credits. Is there any potential of actually selling that directly to, for example, other municipalities that may want to convert their fleets as well, and correspondingly kind of keep that local, but where frequently it has the greatest impact and is most effective?
Right. If folks want to, we can arrange that. I mean, right now we sell a little bit of it. There's a Ho Chunk Gaming is right across the street from our landfill, and we have a really good relationship with the Ho Chunk in Dane County, and they fuel one of their vehicles that they just converted at our station. So yeah, we're always interested in that. And and one of the things I should mention that we're doing also is in my, if it gets approved, in my budget that I just introduced this morning, my 2023 budget, we are going to implement carbon capture at our methane plant, because when you take that methane and turn it into fuel, you still do lose some into CO2. And so we're going to invest in carbon capture at that plant to reduce that even further. But yeah, if other people want to tap into that source, we're all about that.
So Susan, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let's just get one more question and then we'll hold the other questions for the breakout rooms.
Okay, I'm going to choose a question that's coming from John. I'm forgetting your last name. The question is, how can we get more county support for farmers to transition to rotational grazing operations versus mega factory farms? And realizing there's not a lot of mega factory farms in Dane County. So if we are to protect our Yahara watershed and reduce methane emissions, we really need to have more eco-friendly small-scale farms and not just a handful of large-scale industrial CAFOs.
Okay, you're going to think I planted that question. So the question was, how do we get more farms to do rotational grazing and more sustainable farming practices?
Right.
So you could do what we're doing in Dane County. We started a few years ago a grant program that we started as a small pilot called the Continuous Cover Program. And what this is, it's a grant program for local farmers who are currently doing row cropping who want to do one of three things. Convert their land to rotational grazing, or they could plant perennial grasses for harvesting, or if they have lands they'd like to plant, convert to prairie that they just don't want in there might be some sensitive lands that they're farming right now, but they, would be better off in another, planted in prairie or something else. And we started out with a small pilot, and was just off the charts successful. And so now we're putting millions of dollars annually into this program, and it ends up breaking down about a third. About a third of the folks are using the grants to switch to rotational grazing. A third are doing some perennial grasses, and then another third are changing it into prairie. And the neatest story from this experience, now again, it's been a few years, but our very first farm family that took part in this, I went out to their farm to take a look at what they were doing, and this was before they had just gotten the grant, and it was still in row crops, and they were talking about how they're going to convert it to rotational grazing, and that this grant program will allow that to happen, because this young farmer wanted to do this, but he didn't have the resources, and he said, "This is the way my grandfather farmed, and I get to go back to it now." And that was a really special day for me. So there are folks out there who want to do this. They want to farm more sustainably, or they may have lands they would rather have in prairie, but they don't always have the ability and the resources to do it. So if local governments can come up with a little help, Lord knows the government subsidizes a lot of things that aren't especially good for the environment. Why not help people who want to do something that's good for the environment? So if folks out there would like any more information on our continuous cover program, or really anything I've talked about, that if you are a local elected official, or if you want to share it with your local elected officials, please feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Kathy. You can find us on the Dane County website, and we're happy to share any information.
Thank you so much. Can we have another round of applause and thank you?
So the plan for the rest of the evening is we have some updates. Those of you, is there anyone here who is new to 350 Wisconsin here in this room? Raise your hand. Welcome. Welcome. And on the Zoom land, anyone who's new, if you want to, yes, I see someone raising their hand. That's wonderful. In about 15 minutes, we'll have a welcome for newcomers where you can meet with people to find out a little bit more about us. But I'll say overall welcome. We do tend to do a lot of things with teams. And so a few teams want to give you updates. I'm going to start with the Community Climate Solutions team, who had a wonderful idea of inviting Joe to speak. Julia, are you on the Zoom? Can you give your announcements, your updates?
Hi, Julia. I'm Julia De Palma. I am here. So hi, everyone. Welcome to newcomers. I am one of the 3 co-leads for the Community Climate Solutions team. Our focus is on working with elected officials and really garnering climate action on a policy level. So some new working groups that we have for volunteer opportunities is a statewide group focusing on energy burden in Wisconsin. This is based off of the success we found with our recent report that found that the lowest income communities in Madison spend more than 10% of their income on average on their energy costs every month. We found this really impactful and educational for people, so we're trying to expand that to different communities. We also have project groups for our Dane County working group focusing on sustainable land use and water saving practices, monitoring the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission and the Dane County Board of Supervisors. If y'all could go to the next slide, please. And if you are interested in volunteering with us, I will throw the link in the chat of who to contact. Next up from us this month, Madison is on the cusp of releasing the draft of its new sustainability plan. We're really excited because the new plan uses true metrics to track the progress and was built using a really strong equity lens to make sure that everyone is served by this new plan. Please sign up for updates from CCST to learn more about the plan when it's released so we can garner as much public support as possible. Again, I'll put that link in the chat. Speaking of sustainability plans, I really want to congratulate our Middleton working group for their help in passing Middleton's new sustainability plan. They did a lot of work with the Sustainability Committee in Middleton, gave public comments, communication, and alders through a multi-year process. I think it's been at least 2 years that they've been working on this, so we're really excited. And lastly, I have one action that everyone who has a phone can do right now. The Public Service Commission is taking comments for a new renewable energy project. It's called the High Noon Solar Energy Center. It's going to be located in Columbia County. It's going to create a lot of jobs in the area and is also planning to return farmland to more nutritional value and sustainable use in the future once the project goes out of service. It's got a lot of great things about it, and the comment period closes tonight. So I will be throwing the link in the chat. If you could please submit comments, that would be really great. We really want to see this project pass. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Julia. Next slide. Phyllis, I think I'll do this announcement because it's a little hard to hear from Zoom, but then you'll add anything if I miss it. I want to let you know, this is from the tar sands team, the Line 5 pipeline. The environmental impact statement scoping process for the Line 5 tunnel project in the Straits of Mackinac is underway. So you have until October 14th to submit a comment to the Army Corps of Engineers on what issues should be considered in the environmental review of Enbridge's proposed Line 5 tunnel. And you know, Enbridge Line 5 goes across Wisconsin before it gets to the Straits of Mackinac. So whether you're worried about the Great Lakes or Wisconsin, this is very relevant to us. There's still time to make your voice heard. You can sign up for an October 6th virtual meeting on Zoom, or you can submit written comments. And for those of you in the room, you have to write down oilandwaterdon'tmix.org is how you can submit the comments. If you're on Zoom, that should be in the chat. Phyllis, did I cover that? I'm going to assume I did. Okay.
Yes, you did.
Great. Gail, we're now up for you. Gail's going to join us from Zoom.
Okay, good evening. I'm here with 350 Wisconsin Action, and most of you will recall that 350 Wisconsin formed 350 Wisconsin Action, which is a kind of a sister organization that is helping to make sure that we elect climate champions, because having the right people in office is essential if we're going to get the policy in progress we saw tonight what having Joe Parisi as county executive could do in terms of getting progress on climate. And we need people like that in every elected office. We have endorsed, we're supporting at the state level, Tony Evers and Josh Call, and at the national level, Mandela Barnes for Senate, Brad Pfaff for Congress in District 3, Mark Pocan in District 2, and Gwen Moore in District 4. And in addition to working to get these candidates elected, we're making sure that climate is front and center in political rhetoric and discourse. Next slide, please. So how are we doing this? We are doing this. This is a grassroots effort. We're trying to engage as many volunteers as we can to work with us. And 350 Wisconsin Action has its own website, which is 350wisconsinaction.org. And if you go there, you can see the list of volunteer opportunities. It's updated quite regularly. So if you, we also send out weekly email blasts. So, but if you ever at any random time want to see what's going on, please do go to the website. Next slide, please. I wanted to talk about some upcoming things and which you, we're hoping to get lots of people participating in. This Friday, October 7th, from 4 to 6, we're having a Vote for the Climate event on, it's actually not on the UW Library Mall, that's a mistake. It's at the East Campus Mall at the UW. And people who go there will be able to write postcards, vote, sign pledges to vote. There will be pizza, there will be music. It'll be a lot of fun. So plan on stopping by there. On Tuesday, October 11th, from 6:30 to 8:30, Julia and Chuck will be hosting a postcard writing party. We're going to have beautiful postcards, and we're going to be sending them to people who live in the 3rd Congressional District, where there's a very important congressional race there, in addition to our governor and senator races. So drop in on the 11th, and if you're interested in writing postcards from home, go to our website. There's a Google form. You could click, go to a Google form. You could let us know how many postcards you want. You could sign up to attend Julia and Chuck's party. Go to that Google form and we'll get you started on postcards. On Saturday, October 15th, we're going to be doing phone banking. And the way it will work, it will be Tuesday, thank you. Saturday, October 15th and Tuesday, October 18th, we will be doing phone banking. And you will do it from home with your phone, but there will be an app that will make it very easy to do, and we'll all connect on Zoom to get training. You could then mute your Zoom, do your calls, and we'll come back at the end and exchange experiences. If you have any questions while you're doing it, there will be someone on the line on the Zoom to help you. So it should be a really good experience. Again, we're going to be calling into Congressional District 3 to talk to voters there. And then on Saturday, October 22nd, we're going to be doing door-to-door canvassing in the Stevens Point area. That's part of District 3. This opportunity isn't yet on the website, but it will be in a day or two. And this is, again, going to be a really good opportunity to talk directly to voters. So this, we have really ambitious plans. We really want to make a difference, but it really will take all of us to get involved. So again, go to our website and sign up. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Seth, you probably saw the next slide. You want to jump up here and make the announcement?
Thank you, Julia, and thank you for hosting that party. I guess we have some new people, which is great, so I'm going to introduce myself briefly. I'm Seth Tristan Jensen. I've dedicated a lot of the last few years to putting attention, organizing actions that spotlight businesses that are doing the wrong thing. One of them, kind of the poster child, being Chase Bank, that Julia mentioned earlier, the largest funder of fossil fuels. Although none of the big Wall Street banks, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, really can be let off the hook. They're all pumping a lot of money into industries that are damaging the climate. So it was really refreshing to listen to this talk about businesses that are doing the right thing and are really aiding the climate, working for climate recovery. So thank you for everyone who organized that. One parallel that I noticed that's really interesting to me anyway is that we've seen some progress on occasion. A few years ago, I believe it was Goldman Sachs announced a policy that they would cut back on some fossil fuel funding, that they were gonna prohibit financing, making loans to companies that were involved in Arctic drilling. And then Chase Bank followed, and then Wells Fargo at the end of the year. And over the course of that year, this is 2020, basically all the big Wall Street banks passed copycat policies. So it works across the board, from the small local level to the national level. But a lot of that comes from actions and sustained effort. So wanted to announce that after the elections is going to be the next defund climate change action at Chase Bank downtown. Many actions have happened there already. So I invite you to just put that date on your calendar. It's 11/12, that'll be the date, at 11 o'clock. And the other announcement is that, so actions have really been the heart of this campaign, but you can't have a body, a functioning organism with just a heart. There needs to be more. And so there are many other types of things going on to try and pressure Chase and the rest of Wall Street to stop making loans to the oil, coal, and gas companies. And one of those is mobilizing customers. Customers of these big banks can do quite a lot. So there's a new program to train, coach, mobilize people who are customers, and that can be defined very broadly as in, like, I have a Wells Fargo credit card that maybe I haven't used for years, but you still qualify as a customer. Mobilizing folks to do things like meet with your branch managers, express your concerns about fossil fuel finance, and really speak out from a unique position. So this is very fresh. You'll be hearing more about that, but if you're interested and you want to get involved right away, we invite you to send an email of interest to divest.defund@350wisconsin.org, and we will get you set up. Thank you.
Great. We have two more people coming up to speak. Stephanie, our fundraising development director.
Thanks, Julia. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you in person and online tonight. So I wanted to give you an update on a couple of community events that we have coming up. We've had a really fun series called Let's Get Together, and we've had 2 of those events so far. And our last one of the series is going to be at the cider farm on October 19th. And I just wanted to flag that because we did make a date change. We realized that we had a conflict with the Democratic US Senate debate, and we wanted to make sure that everybody would be able to attend that. So we hope to see you. It's a free event. There'll be some light appetizers. It's a great opportunity to meet our staff and board and just socialize a little bit, maybe take a little break from all the great work we're doing on the elections and just get together. So as I said, it's free, but we do appreciate if you register. And you can do that on our website, on our upcoming events page. And Mariah is going to also put that in the chat tonight. So that's the first one. And then the second one, I would ask you to save the date for our Giving Tuesday celebration. This is our biggest community event of the year, and we really look forward to celebrating all of our volunteers and members and coming together. And that is November 29th. It's the Tuesday right after Thanksgiving, so it follows Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And we've had a really fun time with that over the last few years. We do a silent auction online and in person, and we'll have some entertainment. So really encourage you to just mark that date on your calendar, and we'll have some more information coming out shortly. So just check back at our website and our Facebook page for more information about that. So thanks everyone. I hope to see you there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nikki. I am the volunteer coordinator and business manager for 350 Wisconsin. Nice to be in person and online tonight. So really happy to be here. So the first thing I want to talk about is a volunteer opportunity for participating in Climate Fast Forward, which is an event put on by the Wisconsin Academy of Sciences, Arts, and Letters, and will feature a lot of speakers, a lot of change makers in the climate space, climate professionals, and diverse audiences. And normally registration is $175, but if you sign up to volunteer for at least 3 hours at Climate Fast Forward, then you get in for free. So we highly, highly encourage you to do so. There's plenty of spots still open, and it should be a fantastic time. You can volunteer for your 3 hours and then be able to participate in the rest of the conference and really have an enriching time with a variety of people who are focusing on these issues as well. Yes, it is on October 17th, which I believe is a Friday. So a Monday. It is during the week. All right, and next slide here. All right, so I also like to introduce our volunteer of the month each month. And this month, I think it is rather apropos to be recognizing Susan Millar, who you saw many times tonight. Yes, thank you, Susan. So Susan is one of our co-leads for the Community Climate Solutions team, and she has been with 350 for a very long time. She was a co-lead core coordinator before we even had a board, and really has built and helped build that team with the assistance of the other co-leads into something really special, something where we're making impacts all the time. A couple other things I really want to highlight about Susan is her dedication to the advancement of young people in our organization, because we have a number of interns every semester, but Susan has really taken this upon herself to expand and grow that program within the Community Climate Solutions team, always wanting to bring on new interns and bringing them into the fold in such a way that they are incredibly engaged and having a mutually beneficial relationship where they are learning a lot, and also we are benefiting from the different things that they're doing with us. And because of Susan and all of the work she has done, we have so many interns who actually continue for a second semester with us because they feel so welcomed and engaged in the work. And Susan is just a wonderful leader in her own right, with her own home, getting off of gas. So many different things I could say about Susan. I could go on all night. So thank you so much, Susan, for everything you do. We all really appreciate all of the work that you have done and continue to do with 350 Wisconsin, and just want you to know that you are so, so appreciated. So, thank you.
Thank you. Now I think we'll wind up quickly. Next slide just says if you want to learn more about the teams, you should talk to Nikki. And in about 2 minutes, Nikki's going to go out into the lobby there, and she just likes to meet with people who are new to sort of say hello because she's so friendly. Let's skip the next slides. There's lots of meetings. You can join lots of teams. It's better to, I think you know when they are. Let's skip those 2 slides. Okay, I want to just tell you about the next monthly meeting team. It's actually quite a long time from now because October 3rd is an early first Monday, and we don't ever meet before elections, we don't meet because we know that so many of you may be getting out the vote and doing different things for the election. So it's Monday, November 14th will be our next meeting, and we're lucky to have a pediatrician, Dr. Andrew Lewandowski, who will talking to us about how he talks with people about climate change and health impacts. Our November and December meetings will be virtual. We know that November 29th, some of us in the Madison area will be getting together at Garver Mill. But we will see what this is like and then make plans for future hybrid meetings, not every meeting, but on occasion in 2023. So now it's time for breakout. So the way this is going to work, if you're a newcomer, you will walk into the lobby if you're here and meet with Nikki. If you're a newcomer on Zoom, you're going to join breakout room 1, and Emily Park will meet with you. Everybody else can stay here, and there are some more questions, and Kathy Kuntz has graciously volunteered to stay and answer more questions about what Dane County is doing. I realized that if people wanted to leave, which of course you're welcome to do also, Nikki, you'll just have to find a quiet place in the lobby because people may be going out into the lobby to get back in their cars. And of course, people on Zoom, if they want to leave, they can too. But we hope that you will stay for a little more Q&A. So with that, let me just see. I just want to thank again Christina and Tom, who are conferring with each other. I want to thank you, Christina and Tom, for making this so easy for me. And thanks everyone who participated in our first hybrid meeting. Yay! Why don't we take like 3